With the current, COVID-19 situation, the social sector needs have emerged differently as well, from what we've heard and seen in the news. But it's been amazing to see how the community of corporates has responded to some of them. We've seen this through our pre-survey that, corporates have responded either through donations or in-kind support. And we really appreciate how everyone has stepped up and supported the sector in their own little ways. But with volunteering being especially hard in these challenging times, we really hope that with today's session, you all leave with some ideas and are able to rethink how your corporate volunteering efforts can be channelized to support our sector. Just a quick introduction of who we are. We at Empact are a social enterprise ourselves, and we serve as an intermediary to bridge the gap for different stakeholders, such as grant makers, corporates, and volunteers. And we do this by connecting them to the needs of the social sector. Essentially, we're a capacity builder for the social sector. And our approach to capacity building is really twofold. We do organizational development and also individual development. And how we do this is by gathering either sector-wide knowledge and insights by conducting surveys, a bit of which you will see through Peter's sharing later. For business function related areas such as marketing, finance, and HR, similar areas, we channel talents through different forms of volunteering. Again, a bit of this you will see through, what my colleague Andrew will share shortly after. And whenever the needs require a huge commitment, such as volunteer management, which requires really specific niche skill sets, we basically do it using our own team and we do it ourselves through consultancy. So essentially, really what we do is we bridge the capacity gap for social organizations through different programs. Either we get partners to do it, or channel volunteers to do it, or we just do it ourselves. And who are the people who we work with, when we say we build capacity of the social sector? We build capacity mainly of those organizations that function in the social space, which is mainly the nonprofit organizations that we're all familiar with. And also to this group called social enterprises that are revenue generating and have social goals to achieve. And collectively at Empact, we call these two groups as social organizations. And you'll hear more about this later in the webinar as well. So in 2019 alone, we've supported more than 500 social organizations, and we're also able to channel more than 1,500 volunteers to the needs of the social sector, either through hands-on volunteering, skills-based volunteering, or through some of our other services. And lastly, by really working with organizations to use technology to improve processes and achieve productivity gains, we have helped them generate cost savings too. Now, you would be wondering, how do we bring all of this impact to life? We actually do this by working with our corporate partners, and we customize programs and create programs depending on the resources that our partners can provide, and match them to the specific needs in the social sector. I'm sure some of the participants today can really identify themselves here, and we're really pleased to, partner with impact-focused corporates like yourselves. We've been with touch with our corporate partners, and also as we work very closely with our social organizations, and hence we wanted to create a space, for us to share what are these needs on the ground and gather support from corporates. At the same time, create some awareness about how corporates can still find a way to engage employee volunteers purposefully, which is also something we hear, from you based on the pre-survey that we had conducted, that these are some things that will really help you guys move to the next level of supporting the sector. Although today's sharing is more geared towards corporates, we're really glad to also see some non-corporate stakeholders join us today. You can definitely apply some of these insights in the context of an organization that can actually provide volunteers. So what the next hour will all be about is these three key things. One is us sharing some insights, from the needs that we have gathered from our social organizations, followed by how capacity building and skills-based volunteering can really help address some of these needs. And lastly, what you as corporates can do with skills-based volunteering, and how can you respond to the needs to support the sector. Now, some of you might be familiar with the concept of skills-based volunteering because you're already doing it. But in the interest of those that might not be very familiar with it, we will be touching very briefly on introducing skills-based volunteering. So do bear with us if this is something you're already familiar with. And aside from this, we will also have some time for Q&A. So feel free to type your questions, as and when our speakers are sharing their bits into the chat box, and we do our best to address them within the session. So without further ado, I would like to now invite our speaker, Mr. Peter Yang, to share some insights on the needs among the social organizations. Peter is the founder and CEO of Empact. And over the years, he has grown to be a leader, not just within Empact, but also in the wider local social enterprise and charitable community with his innovative thinking and passion to positively impact social organizations. Over to you, Peter.
Thank you, Pranita. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so glad that we have a large group joining us today. We almost sort of worried that whether Zoom's capacity will be able to host everybody. So again, really acknowledge you spending the time during this busy period. I'm sure everyone has a lot to deal with, and invest that time to really look at how you as an organization could invest your resources to help the community. So I would want to begin to say that our social sector is also facing unprecedented challenges too, not just the business, but our social sector. You might have already seen the headlines that donations are dropping for quite a number of the organizations and a volunteer due to the circuit breaker and etc. are not readily available to help delivering the core services to the needy community. But it's very heartening to say that despite all the challenges, our nonprofit organizations and social enterprises are continuing to deliver their services. And whether it is, helping the migrant workers recently to make sure they have SIM card to contact their families, or whether it is really continue delivering food to the elderly who don't have access to meals. And I think all of these are not possible without many of your support. Doing the pre-registration form, we have heard a lot that many of you have donated to the critical needs. Some of you have provided a care pack for the health workers, and even some of you have donated, laptops, iPads, etc., for the needy students to cope with the home-based learning at this moment. I think many of the needs currently, the corporates are responding to emerging needs, on the program and services. At the same time, it's a great challenge for a nonprofit organization, not only to innovate on their service, but also to look at how they can organize themselves more efficiently, and also a great challenge of their people to adapt to this change and increase their response to the community. So as a capacity builder and a little bit of context setting for today, we will really want to set the context for today's session to focus more about, I would say, a little bit of the invisible needs, which is the organization needs, and also those people who are working in this organization and making these critical services available at this moment. So this is also Empact's approach, as Pranita shared. So usually we start our work as really gathering needs and gathering insights on what's really happening in the community. And at this critical moment, as needs are changing very fast, and we thought, what is the better way than hosting a sharing session online to just quickly share what we have learned and what are emerging needs, so that you may gather some insights and to support you guys to enhance the support to the community. So for the past 2 months, we have been very busy, despite the constraint of the circuit breaker, or even earlier the DOSCON Orange, that many of our volunteer program has stopped, or we have quickly transited into digital ways of doing, but we have been kept ourselves busy. So we have launched a pulse check, and we're very encouraged to have heard from leaders from 150 plus leaders to tell us what they really need from their organization and their people. Aside from that, we have started a peer support group with nonprofit organization and ourselves joining, social entrepreneurs, just really support each other at this critical point of time, not only with ideas how to survive, how to thrive, but also just offering moral support to each other. In addition to that, we gathered needs from the not only in Singapore but also in other countries, like intermediaries like Empact operating in the US, operating in Hong Kong, operating in Europe. And interestingly, that these organizational needs and people needs are really similar across the globe. And we are very heartened that there's many knowledge sharing is happening across the globe. And this is something that I also would like to share with you. And last but not least, we have partnered with Raise, also providing business clinics as the immediate response in 3 weeks ago for social enterprises that have really been impacted by COVID-19. And through that, we have also gathered a lot of valuable insights. So I guess today's my sharing with you will not just be data. I will share with you some of the specific organization context as we have gotten the permission from them, or some of these needs are really public available. And on top of that, we also would like to share with you our view as an intermediary. What are some of the blind spots that our sector leaders are not thinking yet? And translating to that is what are the silver lining for the community? And most importantly, you as a corporate, how can you take action in responding to these needs? Okay, let me just start with the nonprofit group. So we asked the nonprofit leaders to choose the top areas where they have been impacted the most. And I guess, it's not a non-surprise that the program and service delivery is top of their mind. And fundraising and donation is really something that they have been impacted with. I can give an example. I think many of you have worked with Habitat for Humanity. And I think, in the past few weeks, since the DOSCON have turned into orange, I think many of their cleanup programs, which typically they engage volunteers, has stopped. And because a large portion of the donation is tied to their program, so they also experienced a sharp drop of funding. And then even doing those kind of before circuit breaker starts, the staff has to take on additional duty because of shortage of volunteers. The staff has to do more to continue the essential services. And so among all the survey, what we find out was most kind of surprise for us is among the sector leaders, human resource or taking care of their own, managing their own staff was not one of the key priorities. Doing our kind of support group or one-on-one interviews, and we find that this is really a critical area, but our leaders currently really managing the crisis and have very little bandwidth to look after that. And I think this is potentially one area that some of you can step up and help them in managing their staff. So we went on to understand a little bit about how much is the impact on their ability to service the beneficiaries. As you can see that about 20% of the nonprofits who think this area is critical have indicated that their reduction in the ability to service the user is more than 50%. Just imagine that they are currently 20% of them are only able to support not more than 50% what they used to support. And I can share one of the example of the Campus Impact, which is a smaller nonprofit who take care of youth at risk and the low income family by supporting them with tuition program and etc. And I think 1.5 months ago, their programs has largely been suspended because they couldn't. Those are the programs require a lot of interaction and they can't really transit into online fast enough. So for a number of programs that they are managed to go online and they managed to do home-based learning. So they managed to sort out all the laptop issues and etc. And even with that, they have been reporting to us to say that it's really difficult to one, train volunteer, because not all the volunteer who use to join their tuition program are customers to home-based learning, and so they have to really train and recruit a very different type of volunteers to help them to manage the situation. And also the effect of home-based learning are not as ideal for certain group of the youth, especially those youth at risk, which has other underlying issue to have to deal with. So there's a dropout rate, and because of the circuit breaker, they couldn't also do home visits to really figure out what these youth are dealing with. So on the fundraising side, we also asked a similar questions about the level of reduction in fundings, or especially in donations that they are receiving as compared to before. The number, as you can see, is quite shocking for us. You know, about 30% of the nonprofits receive less than 50% as they would normally receive in this period of time. As many of the charity has planned their fundraising events way in advance, you know, the cancellation and the deferment of these fundraising events really have made a huge impact in terms of their financial situations. One of the examples here is Cerebral Palsy Alliance Singapore. They have shared with us that they have experienced a sharp decrease of donation. Possibly it's because, you know, even though we see a lot of the donation increasing for the large fundraising, you know, going on, whether it is the Courage Funds, etc., it's very encouraging to see a lot of donations. But in areas that the service are not so or so frontline health area, so the charity have generally experienced a drop in donations. So CPAS is no exception. Because of deferment of the events, so their revenue has been dropping, and they have been innovating, and we have been sharing with them, you know, how to transit into digital fundraising, which now has become a very competitive and a very crowded space, and practically every charities are online raising money. You know, how to stand out and find a donor is really a top challenge. And interestingly, you know, CPAS has tried to explore the idea of virtual gala dinner. And they are facing quite idea is always very nice, but also facing a lot of challenges from donors, kind of perception, as well as you know, the caregivers of their beneficiaries are questioning them, should their resources be better utilized to take care of the people with cerebral palsy, rather than focusing on generating donations. So then we went on to ask them what are the form of support they are looking for. Again, no surprises that require money, whether it is increase the funding or kind of asking from makers to be more lenient on the existing KPI are the top needs from the organization to ensure that they are financially sustainable. Interestingly, there's a lot of help has been offered to them, and they have been telling us that they would want a very much a consolidated platform with available resources that they can view in one go, rather than piecemeal have to figure out many different components. I'm not sure whether, you know, NCSS and others have already started, you know, sharing fund where all the fundings can be and under which situation. I think that these are very helpful. Could be very helpful for the organization. Surprisingly or not surprisingly, technology and digitization support has become the top 3 needs. It's really hard. It's really hard for us to imagine. Before that, Empact has been helping organizations to go digital for the past maybe 4 or 5 years, and some of our partners are in this room, and we faced a lot of resistance. And maybe that's one thing that circuit breaker has helped open is really that the organization are now forced to look into technology and digitization. And also interestingly, hearing from best practice from others emerged as one of the needs. Correspondingly, also, if you look at the bottom area, you know, we really gathered that in the capacity to work with volunteers, to hear from consultants or even pro bono volunteers, are not really the top priority for the organization right now, as they're dealing with the main challenges in program and fundraising. Just to share, in the response, and I think Topor is in the audience as well. So we have, major ground makers are stepping up, trying to help these organizations to increase the funds that they can receive, so help them to tie through this special period. And for us, we are very inspired by the SG United website. And we have started a corresponding, am I still? Okay. We have started a corresponding page on our website, really just listing on the supply side, which are the corporates or which are the ground makers are offering support. So in hoping that, we can consolidate all the information for the nonprofit partners to make things easier for them. So if you have anything, you are doing something and you want to shout out and reach out to the nonprofits, please also let us know so we can help feature you in that part. So that's briefly about the nonprofits, and I want to switch the gear to social enterprise. The reason why we separate nonprofit and social enterprise, because inherently there are a lot of similarities. Like these organizations are really purpose-driven, and they are really set up because there are certain social objectives they want to achieve. But however, social enterprises are run primarily using business model. For those of you who are not familiar, social enterprise could be, if you want to support people with physical disability, instead of helping them with financial assistance, you employ them to work in restaurants, or to give them a job opportunity so that they can have a job and have an earned income. So social enterprise, I would say, from a business point of view, are very, very similar to all of you in the main business area. And they use market-based kind of way to generate revenue and to sustain themselves. Hence, a lot of their needs are very similar and very relatable to many of you who are maybe facing the similar situation. So no surprising, the top needs are really cash flow. And usually social enterprises are much smaller. You can consider them as really similar to a smaller SMEs, with staff size to about 0 to 20, or some of the larger ones maybe have 40 to 50. Probably that is the range of the size of the social enterprise. So cash flow is really critical for them. And revenue, being able to acquire revenue in this period of time is their top concern. And interestingly, in contrast with charities ranking human resources being very low, and I think surprisingly, social enterprises are the top concern are their staff and their people. I think primarily we are making sense from two perspectives. One is really about a lot of their staff are beneficiary. They employ people with disabilities, people with mental health issues, and etc. So these are their primary purpose. So in this period of time, taking care of that people become a very top agenda in that sense. And one of the example, PlayM, one of the organizations who offers creativity courses for low-income kids and the mainstream kids. During this period, their revenue is down by 50% because their school programs are all get cancelled. I mean, they have been reaching out to us and others, talk about, if this situation continues, they will face a very, very critical cash flow challenges even to continue operating. And we have another social enterprise called Bloomberg, who employs people with low income to in their flower business. Since the dot-com orange, or since the China lockdown earlier, so their supply chain has been severely affected. So they couldn't find the supply from China, and also local supply is really expensive. That has caused a huge challenge for their sales as well as cash flow. And through one of the clinics, we managed to match them with a volunteer from Johnson & Johnson on the supply chain side that really helped them to figure out what they need to do. Okay, so in terms of social enterprise, we asked them what is the form of support that they are looking for from a capacity point of view. Receiving funding is no surprise, and financing facility to tie through this situation is quite critical for them. And interestingly, learning best practice, learning from SME owner, and learning from each other how to write for this situation is really top of the mind. And also, there's a lot more openness and willingness to work with volunteers to co-create solutions and getting advice. I just call out, and I think this is a very a unique kind of way. I mean, I think DBS has really extended their business loan to help social enterprises with a very sort of preferential rate. And ourselves, we benefited from that, and it's really easy, and it helped a lot to take care of our cash flow needs. So that's what the sector leader are telling us. But as a capacity builder, we also see a lot of blind spots that our fellow leaders may not take care of at this moment. So as I mentioned, we see from the people perspective, MPO are not prioritizing their staff, and from some of the conversations we have with the ground staff, there will be high kind of stress to cope with the change, whether it's the program change, technology change, and also your way of communication. Everything is changing, so it's very, very stressful for the ground staff. And we have here the cases of burnout, and I think this is really an area, as a capacity builder, we want to create awareness and finding resources from all of you to support in this area. From a social enterprise's point of view, and unlike the MPOs, they usually have a small leadership team by 1 or 2 social entrepreneurs. And in this period of time, mostly they are shouldering everything, how to lead in a difficult situation, and it becomes a really, really challenging topic for a lot of them. And managing difficult conversation with their teams, especially when your business is not doing well and you are employing all the beneficiaries, how do you make a balance about business sustainability and also the help that you want to create? Is something that we see that the social entrepreneur needs. And last but not least, I think from an MPO point of view, and I think there was a lot of fascination in terms of donation, cash donation, because the KPI is structured in this sense. We have been raising awareness, and some of the organizations are experiencing that, they started to appreciate in-kind donation in this point of time, especially food rations, donation of masks and etc., and even maybe donation of technologies and etc. that could help them to offset that cost. So in your conversation with your partners, and if you also at this period of time, if you don't have a large amount of cash to donate, really do open a conversation with them about in-kind donation. It's not that they may not be receptive, it's just that they may not be aware that a certain this is a form that could help them with this case. In terms of silver lining, I think it's very encouraging. I said before that MPOs are forced to embrace technology, and there's a lot of forthcoming started asking, what can we do with technology, and then etc. So there's a lot of chaos in this moment, and we would really like to see how we can work with them during this period of time to help them to gradually onboard and manage the change. From SE point of view, very interesting that we have seen many SE are seeking diversification of their business model, and there are really innovative ideas coming through. And many of the SEs who are used to sell their things doing events or person to person have started embracing, exploring alternative sales channel, whether it's selling on e-commerce and etc. And then there's a lot of capacity building needs comes along with that, and to see once they got onto this channel, how they kind of getting some market share or mind share in this crowded digital space. From an ecosystem point of view, that I'm personally very heartened or very surprised that many of the nonprofits are beginning to open to want to learn from each other what they are doing, learn from best practice. and even start collaborating. And I think when we are rolling out the peer support group, we in the past, I think we wouldn't have much sign up, but interestingly, this period of time, we have nonprofit leader telling us that they wanted to learn and they wanted to collaborate. So for me, it's really a good sign to see how we can come together and to really serve the beneficiary and not letting the organization structure to stop us. From an SE point of view, we also see that there are peer support from each other. We are even buying things from each other and sharing the product with our stakeholder to generate a greater awareness. Okay, so most importantly, with all these insights, from Empact's point of view, these are the maybe the 3 categories of things you can do. From a funding perspective, we still see that philanthropy dollar is really, really helpful for NPOs in dealing with urgent needs, whether it's migrant worker issues, whether it's low-income family, or whether it's just as simple as buying laptops and etc. And beyond that, from our point of view, we see that our NPO partners are really struggling with coping the immediate response. We do see that or foresee that post-COVID, the social space will not be as status quo as before. So we're really needing to look for innovation solutions, and we are welcoming some of you to step forward to invest in looking innovations beyond the COVID-19 situation. From a social enterprise point of view, if I can encourage all of you, just think about you can be the customer of social enterprises. Just give an example, if you need to buy, a staff care pack and etc., you can just think as social enterprise provide these services. Or if maybe when you go back to the office, you need cleaning services and etc. So there are many social enterprises provide these services. So be the customer for our social enterprises. If you want to know who they are, please feel reach to us or raise. I know my time is up, so maybe my last 2 points. So from a product point of view, as I mentioned, feel free to open up the conversation about the in-kind support, as many of the partners may not be aware of that. And last but not least, from an Empact point of view, we really see that not all corporates may have a lot of money to kind of donate or increase the money to kind of continue plugging the hole. And you may not have products that you can share with the nonprofits. So, but what you have is your people and talent. As I mentioned, for nonprofits, I think the critical area will really lies in helping them to implement the technology, the digital marketing, talent management. And also, if you have best practice, work with people like us or sector developers so that we can contextualize the best practice to them so that they can use easily. For social enterprise, I must say that the willingness to engage volunteer, especially skilled volunteer, is much, much higher because for their challenge, it's very much relatable to the corporate volunteers. And in this current situation, there's a lot of needs in terms of looking after finance, how to increase sales, how do I change my business model, and how do I manage the supply chain. So if some of you have this expertise in this area, and I really think that will be tremendous help for this organization. So I will end my conversation to say, we have been sharing what is the need on the ground and categorized in different buckets. But as a capacity builder, as the topic for today, we are really looking at how your volunteering or your skilled volunteering can take care of part of this needs, and especially in the talent and knowledge area. So my colleague, I'll pass on back to Pranita, and my colleague will share a little bit more about skill-based volunteering.
Thanks, Peter, for sharing the insights. I see we have a few questions, on specifically how corporates can actually come in to support. And that's exactly what the next section is about. So now, what we do is we'll, save the questions towards the end, because Andrew's sharing later is really going to be about how you guys as corporates can really step in to support the sector. So for our next segment, we will have Empact's corporate partnerships lead, Andrew Ong, to share with us some ways in which corporates can participate in addressing these needs. Keep the questions coming. Either our team on the back end will address these within the chat function, or have these questions answered within the session for you guys as well. Yep. So over to you, Andrew.
Okay, thanks, Vanita. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see familiar names and also new names in this webinar. This is really our first webinar, and we realized that this COVID-19 situation has really forced many of us to confront a new future. It's really no longer business as usual. Hence, we were really rethinking our partnership engagement in order to rethink corporate volunteering. So, just a start, here's a satirical post about digital transformation. Pardon the low-res image. I put this off the internet, funny as it is, but it's very truthful in how COVID-19 has forced all of us, as I mentioned earlier, to confront a new future. And even our usual approach of corporate volunteering and CSR has been challenged. So, will corporate volunteering return to its usual ways after COVID-19? I think that's the answer I'm also very keen to find out. But for us, I'm certain that we don't believe in just sitting around to wait for the answer, because there's so much needs out there. And and I'm so confident that you guys won't just sit around. If not, you will not be joining us in this webinar to find out some answers as well. So with certainty, COVID-19 has now presented us an opportunity to rethink corporate volunteering. And we would like to think that the answer to that is skills-based volunteering. So you may ask, why? Why do I say that? So before I ask or answer that why, perhaps let me share what is skills-based volunteering, or SBV in short, especially for those who are new with us. So skills-based volunteering refers to the leveraging of specialized skills and talents of individuals or a corporate to strengthen the infrastructure of social organizations. So through the leveraging of skills and talents, the intent is to help our social organizations to build and sustain their capacity to successfully achieve their social missions. So in other words, through SBV, or skills-based volunteering, our social organizations can leverage direct professional expertise of skilled volunteers to deliver pro bono professional services at a caliber they would otherwise have to pay at market rate, right? So it's a big win for them. But is it a big win for corporates? Of course, that's where I come to the why. Why do we believe that skills-based volunteering is really a great opportunity to contribute to our community and social sector during this COVID-19 outbreak? So here are the key reasons why I say that it is a great way for corporate volunteering. One, during this period of working from home, which has now extended till 1st June, right, because of the extended circuit breaker, now skills-based volunteering allows one also to volunteer from home or remotely. So secondly, with skills-based volunteering, staff engagement is also made possible during this period. Thirdly, and with the current downtime, it is really a great avenue to develop not just your employees' professional skills or knowledge, but also their leadership traits, such as empathy. If you're still not convinced if skills-based volunteering is a great opportunity, I will say that it's truly a win-win solution, right? Not just for a corporate, but also for a social organizations. So for corporates, you win by really building your reputation and brand as employer of choice to attract talent, especially among the millennials. Not just attracting, but to engage and retain talent as well. Last but not least, we hear so many stories of this where corporates gain market insights that could only result with new development of business from new contexts they have made through volunteering. Of course, a big win for our social organizations, because having another option to get the capacity support that they need during this period of time by tapping on pro bono services is a big help. And of course, they get the impact they need through this period of time where they can leverage on specialized skills to not just survive this crisis, but to prepare them for recovery. So I can share an example of a win-win as well. Recently we had a clinic where we had a chief technology officer volunteering from an MNC to a social enterprise. So imagine with me, what would be the likelihood of a social enterprise being able to engage and hire a CTO level person, professional, to help in their business? It's not impossible, but the chances are very slim. And also, what are the chances of a CTO crossing over to work in the social sector? I would say very slim as well, right? But through SBV, through skills-based volunteering, this is both a win for the volunteer, the corporate, and also for the social enterprise or social organizations, right? So, what are the ways skills-based volunteering can take shape or form during this COVID-19? We have a few examples, case studies from our corporates that we have worked with. Thought just to share a few of them so that they can enlighten you. So Linklaters, the first is a multinational law firm headquartered in London. So the firm's office in Singapore entered into a formal partnership with Empact last year to really help social enterprises here to grow. We've been working with them very closely since and developed a few programs, one of which is the mentoring program. This is a very structured one where it involves their senior partners as mentors. So when the work from home happened, we were into our mentoring sessions, initially we were meeting physically, in office. But the last 3 sessions, we had it virtually online. Yeah. So it became viable to run this mentoring program virtually. So that was really a win for Linklaters in that sense. Although the mentoring program lasts, or the duration of it is about 6 to 8 months, but the level of commitment is about 1 hour per session for once a month. So this is really a win for the corporate in terms of engaging something meaningfully outside of their usual day-to-day work in a legal firm. For the social entrepreneur, what was now, as what Peter mentioned, that usually social entrepreneurs, they are very lonely in that sense. They carry all the demand and, the pressure on their own. So this give and provided an outlet for the social entrepreneur to validate, share her thoughts, emotions, and ideas, and to focus on their own individual, personal, and also organizational development for once. So a win-win, right? Next, we have Procter & Gamble, P&G. They have been partnered with us for 5 years now. One of their key programs where they volunteer their skills and talents is through the short-term consulting. So the short-term consulting involves a team of skilled volunteers from P&G, usually about 5 to 6, yeah, it all depends, working alongside with leaders from community partners to address pre-identified business challenges. So this could range for anything from marketing, fundraising, to volunteer recruitment strategies that the volunteers could conceptualize. So the win for P&G during this COVID-19 was that because of the travel restrictions that were happening, many of their senior management who usually were traveling heavily, they suddenly had a lot of freed up time where they could really volunteer, which was really one of their priorities, many of them that we spoke to with. So that gave a great opportunity for them to step in or step up as well, to be involved in some of this short-term consulting, right? So for the community partner, is definitely a huge win. Just being able to leverage on the invaluable experience and expertise of the P&G team to strengthen their capabilities is huge win, and also huge savings if they would engage an external vendor, right? Pro bono business clinic. This is just the second last one, okay? So bear with me. RACE is the sector developer for social enterprises in Singapore. So they responded to the COVID-19 by providing these business clinics for the affected social enterprises. Together with RACE, we organized and ran this clinic virtually and in view of the gathering restrictions, we move it to a virtual format. But nonetheless, it was virtual. There was still an overwhelming response of SEs coming on board to sign up. So the win for the volunteers, where we match with some individual ones. One was from Johnson & Johnson, who actually was paired up for a one-to-one session with Bloomberg, the one that Peter mentioned as an example as a social enterprise, where they had some issues with their supply chain management due to the COVID-19. So the volunteer from Johnson & Johnson was able, because his expertise was in supply chain management, to lend his skills and expertise to advise, how to navigate the challenges moving ahead. Yeah. Last one, right? DBS Bank, they champion, the growth of social enterprises in Asia as part of their CSR. So through the bank's foundation, we were appointed to really conduct a series of needs assessment workshops for their SE grantees in Singapore, Indonesia, India, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and China. The workshops were actually meant to be carried out physically, with our team also supposedly to fly to China. But of course, as you know, everything came to a halt, traveling and all, and we had to migrate it to a virtual format, and it still worked seamlessly. So the win for DBS and its volunteers was how they could better understand the organizational needs of the social enterprise grantees, which enabled them to better match relevant support to their grantees. And for the social enterprises, what they benefited was really being able to receive customized support for their growth. So those were some great examples that we sort of handpicked and wanted to present during this COVID-19 that shows that it is a win-win solution for corporates and also for social organization, and a great option during this circuit breaker. So as we rethink corporate volunteering, skills-based volunteering really allows one to volunteer from home or remotely. With skills-based volunteering, staff engagement is made possible, right? And last, and with the current downtime, it is really a great avenue to develop not just their professional skills or knowledge, but also their leadership traits. And especially so for our social organization, which why we are here to hear their needs. They already have an option to leverage on specialized skills and talents by tapping on your pro bono professional service, and they will receive a much needed support during this time, right? To really help them not just to survive COVID-19, but also to be ready for the recovery. So for my segment, I hope that you're enlightened with my sharing on skills-based volunteering and how it is a win-win solution. So over to you, Panita. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. I think we've had a few questions on, from our participants on how corporates can actually participate in some of, in taking action, especially, if there are any areas in tech or HR or digitization where, corporates can actually jump in. So perhaps, if Peter could just walk us through, how can corporates really take action, from here on?
Sure. Okay, so back to me. I think, okay. Okay, so I hope for those of you who are not doing skill-based volunteering as yet, so you have hear from Andrew, and we sincerely hope you can consider and adopt skill-based volunteering as really not only good for this timing, but also really deliver a lot of value to both corporates as well as the social organizations. So I will start sharing how can you take action by sharing our belief, and I think which is relevant how I would recommend the approach going forward. For us, any program we start will have to be needs driven. Really look at what is needed, because not only that will make an impact, but it's also like you will have a much higher chance of response rate from your nonprofit partners, because it's really busy time for them. Second is really looking at what are the innovative ways you can do it, given the circuit breaker, or maybe post maybe circuit breaker still have social distancing. How can we do volunteering more innovatively for your organization? And last but not least, with needs changing so fast, how can we collaborate with each other? So I will start from how you can take action. As I shared, we would recommend that you start from a needs base. Looking at these areas as where you can take action. Maybe just looking at maybe some of the format that if you are very interested, let's say you have you have a skill sets about digital marketing, HR talent management, and etc. There are some of the forms that you can take. Obviously, organizing webinar share ideas, or maybe work somebody like us or others who can contextualize these ideas to the social sector and really fitting with their challenge is very much appreciated. Second, just like the PNG story that, case study, that you can organize your team maybe virtually, to look at one of the simple area about technology sort of adoption. For example, many charities are not sure how to use Zoom, how to use Microsoft Teams, how do they organize virtual meetings. Those are very simple and quick wins that you can work with them, as well as if they really wanted to explore the digital marketing or kind of digital fundraising, and to compete or getting their messaging out, they really need support in how to establish their online presence. From SE point of view, what we will suggest or recommend, we feel that business clinics works really well. So we pair one-to-one, helping the social entrepreneur to run through the idea, giving them advice, or at times, even nothing works, some kind of affirmation, encouragement from someone from the outside really helps. And Andrew mentioned the mentoring, and I think mentoring is critical at this moment. And I think, not sure how the situation will continue to go, and we foresee that we might start seeing social enterprises closing down or kind of stop operating, and really critical time. So one-on-one mentoring, the social entrepreneur gone through this critical stage and pivot their business model is essential. And the last but not least, with so many things that are happening, and helping them to really prioritize what they need to look at. Is it cash flow? It is revenue? It is people? How do we scope their needs? I think that's really a very appreciated format as we have seen. So I think, with this, how can you take it forward? Our goal is really that if you have, you have your existing NPO partners or SC partners, I think nothing beats just calling them and having conversation with them to ask them what do they specifically need. What we have shared is more about a landscape, but your partners may have specific challenges. And this critical period of time, even though they may not take your support, but knowing what they need is highly appreciated. There's another possibility if some of for you want to create an innovative ways to kind of address the current situation, or even beyond COVID situation, and find a particular way that your staff can volunteer, whether it is locally or cross-border. We are happy to, find any intermediary like us, like MVPC and etc., so that we can help you with co-creation of this. And in this particular moment of time, I would say, not only because I'm an intermediary, but I really pledge everybody to work with intermediary. Just like how we have seen in the donation space works, that we have Courage Fund, we have Sayang Sayang Fund, and many large fundraiser established by the intermediaries because they are actually more on the ground, and it can help you channel to the right needs much better. Last but not least, and I think we have some centrally run programs kindly supported by some of our partners. So we are going to carry out these programs. So if you have individual volunteers who can meet these skill sets, and also maybe they are stay at home and they want to contribute, but physically they are unable to. So this could be a way to join our program. So I'll just quickly share a few things. As I mentioned, that if you provide any support, I want to raise awareness to you can just let us know that we can just list your kind of support, and we constantly sending out communication to nonprofit, letting them know what are the support available. So we're happy to share for you. And second is that if you okay, we are looking at a webinar on certain topics. We are planning for 6 webinars in the period of between May to June. It will be kind of max, 1 hour and max 2 hour kind of commitment running it, and etc. So if you have a very strong domain knowledge that relates to what I've shared earlier, so please feel free, join us, and I'm happy to kind of co-create with you the content or contextualize the content. We are running a needs assessment workshop for NPOs and social enterprises, like I mentioned, to really help them to understand what's their critical needs are and where they should be spending their time. So we are looking at the 2 workshops in June and October. The commitment is 3 hours each from the volunteers, just helping us to do one-on-one conversation with our partners. We also continue to have clinics, and we are currently planning for 3 clinics, one-on-one consulting with the SER NPO partners on their specific challenges. And the last but not least, we really feel mentoring will make a huge difference, and we're looking at recruiting 12 mentors, which are more senior kind of business leaders, be paired with our social entrepreneurs. And the commitment is about an hour per month, and lasts maybe in between 6 to 8 months. So we will officially we start recruiting maybe I think now to maybe May time, and then the official mentoring will start in June to Feb, and hoping use the mentoring to help to increase the survival rate of our social enterprises. And last but not least, and I know that I share a lot about Empact, and Andrew shared the stories about Empact, but this is really we are hosting this webinar is not about Empact, and we want to really share the needs so that if you already familiar with SBV, you already want to do it, feel free to do it. And somebody had a question about, can we share some of the resources and etc. So we have made some of our scoping tools digitized and open source, and we can share the link afterwards with all of you, so it can serve a little bit of a self-help. And we have written case studies and etc. about helping our corporate partners to self-service themselves. So we're very happy to share that. And call out to say work with intermediaries is very important. We have a lot of intermediary, whether it's MVPC, whether it's Empact, and we also have sector developers like NCSS, Community Foundation of Singapore, RAISE. They all are very familiar with specific type of needs in the ground. Do reach out to them, and they are really rallying support at this moment. And if you think the last really saying that if you really don't have the bandwidth to create a program yourself and to do this centrally, just join us and funnel through your individual volunteer, and we can send you the volunteer recruitment details. And please also indicate that in the form later. Sorry, yeah, pass back to you, Panita.
Thank you so much, Peter. I hope, with Peter's sharing, we were able to address some of the questions that we had from the audiences in terms of how they could take action. So thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon and taking the time to hear more about, what are the needs on the ground. And we really hope that with this session, you get some inspiration to take action and engage your employees meaningfully as well. So we invite you all to, continue the conversation either with us, with other intermediaries, or even within your teams as well. Because like Peter mentioned, it's not about what we do, but it's about, serving the needs better in the community. So also please note that we will be sharing the recording and slides with you all after the webinar. And, we also have a lot of resources available on skills-based volunteering. So feel free to get in touch with our team to be able to access these. If I can just leave you all to, give us some feedback and comments on, how this session was for you all, and, if similar sessions in the future would be helpful, we would love to hear from you. Thank you everyone again, and we wish you all a wonderful evening ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.